Alright, Meat Shields, with spooky season upon us, it's time to break out some VHS and an old VCR, grab our favorite snacks, and gather around for some good old-fashioned creature features. And what better way to start than with 5 absolutely bizarre stories that each have their own sci-fi twist. I'm talking about like a team of cops fighting a brain-sucking stork, a bunch of skydivers who accidentally crash into a UFO, and an insane Karen who turns people into dogs. It's got a little something for everybody. So we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat every single creature in VHS Beyond. So the story begins in the franchise's classic frame narrative style, and this time it's all held together by a documentary about a pair of bizarre tapes that supposedly contain footage of an alien encounter. Yeah, right, but the documentary suddenly cuts over to our first of 5 stories, and we find ourselves in the shoes of a rookie cop, who's basically about to have the craziest night of his life. The story switches perspectives over to Officer Segura, who's just starting his first shift on a secret unit known as WARDEN, or Warden. They've been investigating the disappearance of 17 missing babies over the past few months, but now they've finally managed to track down a suspect. So after a quick briefing, they all grab their weapons and load into the van, where Segura learns that his fellow officer E.T. is actually the father of one of the missing kids. And it's not long before they arrive at the abandoned house. But that's when they spot a zombie-like figure walking around with a chainsaw, and he looks straight at the van before heading inside. The place looks empty, but E.T. gets jumpy and decides to rush in before the others are ready, and frustrated, he smacks a bunch of bottles that are just hanging from the ceiling, which is when all hell suddenly breaks loose. A mutated woman comes charging straight down the steps, and they manage to take her down with a hail of bullets. But upstairs, they can hear more of the creatures stomping around, and it's really only a matter of time before they're surrounded. Okay, talk about a rough first night on the job. These guys just walked straight into some kind of alien zombie trap house, and now it looks like their only choice is to fight their way out. But first, it needs to be said that my boy E.T. here should have never been on this raid in the first place. Since his kid is one of the missing children, this puts him in a shaky emotional state, and most real-world law enforcement agencies would immediately take him off the case because of his personal connection. Now, when they first arrived at the house, the construction workers' behavior was like a huge red flag, because his calm reaction to seeing them pull up wasn't just odd, it was actually bait. It seemed like he was deliberately trying to lure them inside so that they could fight on the zombies' turf, so the last thing you'd ever want to do is rush in there when they're already waiting for you. Instead, their first step should have been to sweep and lock down the entire perimeter while leaving someone with a scoped rifle to provide overwatch from a safe distance. Yeah, they'd want to check around the building for all possible exits and peek in through the windows for any signs of activity so they would at least have a better idea of what they were up against. Then they could enter through a side or back door and use the flashbangs to stun the creatures before they breach the house, giving them a chance to take a few down before they start fighting back. But hey, the good news is that unlike traditional zombies, it seems like the brooders can be stopped with enough damage to their bodies, so there's no need to aim for headshots, at least not yet. But with more of these creatures showing up at any second, they need to make sure that someone's covering all potential entrances to the room, turning the hallways into a fatal funnel, and working together to light these suckers up as they rush in. The best strategy is to stand their ground until the first wave is over, and then start going through the house in an organized fashion, clearing each room one at a time. But they need to make sure that someone's watching their backs and have an escape plan ready in case they're suddenly overwhelmed. Alright, so within seconds, more of the creatures begin to swarm in as the officers struggle to fight them off. They take down the first wave without very much trouble, and then they start going room to room, clearing out any mutants that they find. But while he's trying to catch up with the others, Segura is cut off when the chainsaw-wielding zombie emerges from the shadows and just starts chasing him back through the crib. He pops upstairs and manages to hide until it's gone, but when he goes back to join the others, the creature suddenly reappears and starts attacking them again. Except this time, they all work together to take it down, but when the officers take a closer look at the bodies, they realize that they all have the same bandage on their foreheads. That's when they hear the sound of a baby crying from upstairs, and E.T. immediately rushes towards the noise before the others can stop him. Following him up, they come to a room with a bizarre-looking meteor that has crashed straight through the ceiling, and it seems like it must be the source of whatever happened. They're interrupted when another zombie shuffles into the room, but they're able to take this one down by blowing out its kneecaps, and when they peel off the bandage from his forehead, they realize that his brains is completely missing. This is when they hear E.T. calling for help from somewhere up on the next floor, but they need to go back for the chainsaw first before they can clear a path. Two of the officers circle back down to get it, but that's when the zombies start getting back up, forcing them to use the chainsaw to fight the creatures off. Reaching the next floor, they come to a hallway where they encounter a terrifying pale creature that's cradling one of the babies in its arms. After letting it pass, they find another set of stairs leading up to the attic, and they're sure that whatever the hell is up there must be the source of the problem. When they finally get there, the officers hear a strange noise coming from the shadows, and as they get closer, they're horrified to see a giant stork-like alien draining E.T.'s brains straight out the skull. So basically, they started blasting, but Segura gets attacked by a now zombified E.T., and he ends up getting stabbed by the stork in all the chaos. The others manage to take the creature down, and they help Segura get back to his feet, but before leaving, he comes back and stomps on the stork's head to finish the job. Okay, well, it looks like Segura's first night on the job was almost his last. Now, honestly, they're lucky that E.T. was the only one who bit the dust, and this is exactly why he never should have been on this case to begin with, I swear. You know, in real-life tactical squads, if an officer can't stick to the plan, then they're immediately pulled from the stack and placed in a supporting role until the mission is over. So, the minute that E.T. broke the chain of command, they should have taken him back to the van and put him in charge of watching their backs. And it's important to remember that these guys aren't just regular cops, they're an elite team of monster hunters. So they should all be prepared for all kinds of strange threats, including ones that don't stay dead. And after finding out that the brooders were walking around with no brains, they should have expected these things to eventually get back up. Now, the most logical explanation for how they can still function without a brain would be if they're operating as like some sort of hive mind, with the stork or the meteor acting as the single centralized intelligence. And if that's the case, then bullets aren't gonna cut it, so if you wanted them to stay down, you'd either have to dismember them Dead Space style or set each body on fire before moving on, like in The Evil Within. Where are my Evil Within fans at? I know you're out there. But when it comes to the stork itself, this guy is basically like a boss fight at the end of a dungeon. It stands about 9 feet tall, with long arms, a powerful neck, and a razor-sharp beak made for sucking brains out like a Slurpee. And although it's not bulletproof, it is highly durable, so you're gonna need sustained fire to take it down. Their spray and pray approach seemed to work for a little bit, but if they wanted to be a little bit more tactical about it, then I would suggest spreading out to avoid losing the entire group in a single charge. And instead of dumping all of their rounds into its chest, they should have also focused fire on its knees to cripple it, and then aimed for headshots as a way to take down more quickly. And after this, Segura needs to learn to stay behind his meat shields if he ever wants to make it to retirement. But honestly, I would be asking the chief for reassignment as soon as I got back to the base. This is when the tape cuts back to the documentary, where the host explains that a wealthy family purchased a large estate back in the 1950s. After the parents died, the property was left to their oldest son, but while staying at home during the process of selling it, he kept experiencing bizarre events. So in order to prove that he wasn't crazy, he set up 2 cameras to capture some footage, but before we got to see what's on the tapes, the film cuts over to the next story, where we find a pair of Bollywood paparazzi who are about to find out what happens when you stalk the wrong celebrity. So boom, the story cuts over to a team of photographers named Arnab and Sanu, who spend their days in the streets of Mumbai, trying to capture footage of the famous movie stars there. After almost getting run over for a shot, Arnab gets a call from his boss who says that they need to get over to the studio for some footage of an up-and-coming superstar named Tara. They meet up with their contact, Gippy, who's supposed to be getting them across to the woman's trailer, but before they get to work, Sanu asks if they can watch one of the live takes. I mean, why not? You're in the area, right? The movie star runs all the way through a perfect classic take of a Bollywood dance scene, but it's suddenly cut short when the director decides that he doesn't like what they shot. Tara's manager shouts out that she needs a break after that one, fellas, and Arnab and Sanu decide to make a run for her trailer before she gets back. The leader tells his partners to get behind the trailer and capture whatever he sees, while Arnab sneaks inside to hide in the bathroom. This is when Tara and her manager come storming in, and he shouts at the girl to remember that she can always be replaced. Ouch. As he's watching through the door, Anub accidentally sticks his hand into a bunch of mysterious, clear goo. And when he turns around to see where it came from, he's horrified to discover a woman's face sitting in a bowl. Oh God. Clearly panicking, he stumbles out of the bathroom and starts apologizing for the intrusion. I mean, he's just about to leave when he decides to ask if, she needs any help, but that was his biggest mistake. You see, standing up for her, he says that he'd be just fine without her manager, because she's the star that people pay to see. Taking his words to heart, a creepy smile crosses her face as she stands up from the chair, and all of a sudden, the woman starts peeling off pieces of her mask, revealing that she's actually some kind of clanker. Terrified, and as he should be, Arnub rushes out of the trailer with the malfunctioning robot chasing after him. I mean, the manager even tries to step in, but she spits a bunch of battery acid all over his face, melting the flesh right off of his skull as she turns to go after the others. Alright, I'm gonna be the first to say it, this ain't good. But on the bright side, it looks like our boys are about to get some pretty sick footage. Now, nobody could have ever expected Tara here to turn into the Terminator, right? But there were actually a few subtle red flags for anyone who was paying attention. You see, A-list stardom doesn't just happen overnight, and whether it's in Bollywood or Hollywood, becoming a household name requires like years of training, minor roles, networking. So for the two hardest working paparazzi in Mumbai to have never heard of her until she was already a star, that's like a giant meteor crashing into Earth without NASA picking it up. And it should have been the first sign that something else was going on. Now, the moment that Arnab found her damn face sitting in a bowl of jello, that's when he needed to either stay completely silent and wait for her to leave, or quietly sneak out through the bathroom window and go straight to the police. I mean, he didn't realize it at the time, but when he told Tara that she could do whatever she wants, he accidentally made her self-aware. So before they even considered building an autonomous celebrity robot, they should have had fail-safes in place to prevent this from happening. I mean, they would need hard-coded limitations to prevent her from ever asking too many existential questions, which is like a remote shutdown that could be activated by a code word or like a special signal, and an analog kill switch that can be tripped manually just in case the other digital measures didn't work. Big brain mode here, people. Think about it. Then, and only then, might it be safe enough to put this thing in front of a crowd. Now, Tara might be terrifying, but she wasn't built for combat, so what they need to do now is let the crowd draw her attention and use them as meat shields while they get to a safe distance. And if they can't escape fast enough, then they should try to blind or like disorient her by overwhelming her optical sensors with flashes from their cameras, like studio spotlights or even the foam from fire extinguishers. And since she has no vital organs, hits to the body, they're not gonna work here. So instead, they either need to go for headshots to take out her brain or use blunt objects to cripple her legs and limit her mobility. I've seen the Terminator movies, okay? This isn't new to me. And if they react quickly, then they should be able to reach their scooter and get the hell out of there before she melts their faces off. The onlookers rush to take cover inside the studio, only to wind up trapped as the killer robot follows them in. Grabbing a plug from one of the machines, she jolts herself full of electricity and starts sending bolts of red lightning flying all over the room, basically zapping everyone to death besides Arnub and Sanu, who somehow managed to survive the attack, which, okay, fair. Once they link back up, the robots get to Sanu first, pinning him to the ground and jamming her thumb into his eyes. Horrified, Arnub struggles to find his way off the set, but Tara corners him on the stage and rips off both of his freaking arms, before using her claws to peel the face straight off of his head. Putting the face on like a mask, the robot walks outside to where a bunch of paparazzi are waiting, and slowly, as they realize that something's wrong with her face, she calls in a UAV and starts going after the crowd. Documentary Part 3. As the footage cuts back to the documentary now, the host explains that the classic image of the modern day alien comes from a famous book called Communion. As the book gained popularity, so did the stories of people's alleged encounters with them, and some began to worry that these aliens might not be that friendly. This next tape cuts to some footage from the back of a small airplane where a guy named Zach and his friends are going skydiving for his 30th birthday. These guys are only about 3 minutes from the drop zone when the pilot spots something off to their right side, and looking out the window, they're actually amazed to see a whole ass UFO hovering right in the distance. The spaceship vanishes into thin air, and the action starts to ramp up as the trio of fighter jets comes dangerously close to their plane. And that's when something lands on top of the plane as the passengers get ready for an emergency exit. Glancing out the window, Zach sees an enormous three-fingered hand appear on the other side of the glass, and with all the chaos going on, the pilot ends up crashing straight into the UFO, like bruh, sending everyone plummeting to their deaths as the plane breaks apart in midair. No cap. This shit really happened. With his panic attack in full swing, Zach watches as the others all go tumbling towards the ground. This is when he flips around to see a giant alien grabbing one of his buddies as they both fall past, but he's finally able to release the chute just in time. Now, all things considered, it was barely enough reaction time for him to slow down as they crash land in the middle of an ocean grove. But luckily, he manages to survive the fall, because, you know, that's my boy. Parts of the plane even start raining down around Mans, and Zach barely manages to avoid being crushed, so getting to his feet, he's horrified, and rightly so, to see that Logan was decapitated by the parachute. And he immediately begins to freak out and start screaming for help. Okay, so Zach here is pretty lucky to be alive, but he won't stay that way for very long if he isn't careful. Now, as soon as they spotted this huge mothership in the distance, the pilot should have immediately called off the jump and turned back towards the landing strip before the situation became any more dangerous. And once he lost power and the plane went into a stall, that's when he should have opened the doors and let the skydivers out while they could still exit safely. So, falling out of a plane while attached to an unconscious instructor would be terrifying, for sure, but it's not an automatic death sentence. Almost all modern tandem rigs are equipped with an automatic activation device that fires the reserve chute once you pass a preset altitude. Otherwise, the student can always reach behind the instructor's right hip and pull the chute themselves. Now, Zach was lucky enough to survive the fall, yeah, but that doesn't mean he's out of the danger zone. He still has these aliens to worry about, and although we don't know much about them yet, we can see firsthand that they're massive, fast, clearly hostile, so here's what he needs to do. First, he needs to go quiet and stop yelling for help. Noise is dangerous, but it's also his greatest ally because it lets him know where the aliens are coming from. So for now, he should let the other survivors draw their attention and listen for the sounds of trouble and go the other way. He also might have noticed that the creatures are scaring the birds, so if he keeps an eye on the wildlife, then he'll know whether an alien is close by. The key here is to use the trees for overhead cover and run in a serpentine path to avoid making his movement patterns like too obvious. He should also try to mask his smell and thermal signature by covering his body in dirt, since we don't know what senses these creatures use to hunt. Grab a branch or like a sharp piece of metal in case he has to defend himself, and find his way to a road or a structure where he can hide until the military takes them out. At this point, Zach is doing everything he can to call out for any other survivors, and luckily he runs into his friend Britt, and they both go rushing towards the sound of somebody screaming, and they find the pilot slowly dying from his injuries. Zach then hears his wife Jess calling for help, and as he runs towards the sound of her voice, one of the aliens appears and drags the pilot's body away. Terrified beyond belief, they all run for their lives as the aliens start 86ing them, but they don't make it far before one of them grabs Britt and disappears into the trees. Like, damn, we just met Britt. Zach and his friends Noah try rushing to save her, but by the time that they catch up, they find that the alien is standing over her smoldering body, and they're forced to book it as it turns to go after them next. Zach trips and falls flat on his face, turning around just in time to see the alien about to eat his ass up, but at the last second, it leaps straight over Zach and goes after Noah instead, holding him down and melting off his face with an energy beam. Yeah, then his ass stands up and extends two giant metal spikes from his wrists. Oh yeah, and plunges them straight into Noah's chest as he jolts his body full of electricity. Like, damn, son! There's nothing Zach can do besides keep going, so he takes off sprinting through the trees until he finally runs out of breath. Not all hope is lost for Zach, because he does find his wife's bandana lying under this tree, and finds her kneeling in the middle of the trail not much further away. So, okay, but when he goes to check on her, he's shocked to discover that she's already dead. So now Zach is pissed, and he just starts shouting at the aliens in a blind rage, which, okay, you know, as you should. And when he's ready to give up, he hears an engine coming from somewhere beyond the trees, so he rushes towards the sound and relieves to find this farmer dude, and he climbs into the passenger seat, but the man pulls out a revolver and tells him to, you know, beat it. All Zach wants to do is try his best and explain what the hell is going on, when suddenly one of the aliens grabs this dude from behind, and he accidentally fires off a shot that blows off half of Zach's hand. This dude is just being eaten right in front of Zack, and a second alien climbs into the cab and blasts Zack with a shot of its energy beam. But somehow he manages to survive the attack. When his vision clears up, he's relieved to see that the aliens are gone, but when he tries driving away, the truck is stuck. He starts to feel like a bizarre force pulling him up, and the entire truck is lifted off of the ground and hoisted into the air by the ship's tractor beam. Scary for some, but there's people out there that have been waiting their whole lives to get abducted, so enjoy it while you can, Zack. When Zack finally stops, he finds himself in the middle of a pitch-black chamber of some sort, and a blinding light appears out of the darkness and hits him with another blast of radiation. Damn, Zack! Okay, now this is officially the worst birthday ever. Buddy just had to watch everyone he knows get massacred by a bunch of freaky mantis men. And I don't know what happened to him at the end there, but I'm pretty sure they weren't bringing out a birthday cake. Now, Zack didn't exactly do himself any favors by running towards the other survivors and making as much noise as humanly possible, but there might have been an opportunity for him to actually do something there. First, though, we need to talk about his decision to chuck an orange at the creature's head, Lamau, because it's actually not as dumb as it might seem. Remember, we don't know the aliens' biological makeup, which means we don't know what kind of immune system they have or what kinds of regular Earth things might unexpectedly take them out. It's like how in War of the Worlds, the aliens are kind of eventually killed off by normal Earth bacteria because they evolved on a completely different planet. So, for all we know, the aliens could be deathly allergic to citric acid, sugar, Mountain Dew, or even the microbes on the orange's surface, which means that nothing's off the table until you've given it a try. During one of the attacks, we saw the alien produce some kind of bioelectrical discharge from two metal spikes that came out of its wrists. And that's where the irrigation system comes into play. If you look closely, you'll notice these irrigation lines all over the orange grove, and based on the ripe fruit and the new blossoms that we see, there's a good chance there's pressurized water running through the lines right now. So if Zack were to rip one of these hoses and allow it to spray water on the alien just as it started electrocuting his body, it might accidentally zap itself and end up dead, or at least injured enough to finish it off. I mean, it's a long shot, but it's definitely better than getting abducted, so it's always worth a try. Alright, now we cutting back to the documentary where the host explains that he is not qualified to say if the footage from the Farrington house is real or not. Instead, he has to rely on visual effects artists to analyze the tape, so he brings in Sam and Nico from the YouTube channel Corridor Digital. We'd love to see it. As they're explaining what they think of the footage, the tape suddenly cuts to a commercial for a dog-sitting service called Doggy Dream House, where we meet the villain of our next horrifying tale, which is lovingly called Fur Babies. Alright, yeah, the next tape finds us in the headquarters of an animal rights activist group, where the leader, Miles, explains their next mission. They're going after a woman named Becky, who runs a local doggy daycare, because they found out that she keeps the badly taxidermied bodies of her past pets. This is a no-no, and the plan is to send in Stuart and Angelica as a couple looking to board their dog, while secretly collecting as much incriminating footage as they can. They have absolutely no idea just how insane this woman really is. I mean, as soon as they get to the house, Becky immediately starts trying to let their dog out of the carrier, forcing Angelica to distract her before she notices the hidden camera. I mean, things start out normally enough, but this is when Angelica asks if anyone else lives there, and the woman insists that it's just her and the dogs. Big Stuart decides to ask about the stuffed pups above the fireplace, and they quickly notice that the one named Gary is missing. The woman explains that he died in a battle with a home intruder, so instead of burying him, she felt like he deserved something a little more special, being one of the family members and all. Big Stu can't hold back his feelings for not 1 second longer, and tells the woman straight to her face that he's disgusted by what she's doing. Becky agrees to disagree, and even though she lets it slide, it seems like she's getting mad suspicious. But instead of calling them out, she just goes right back to giving them the tour. Walking down the hall, Stuart gets jump scared when a large man barks at him from behind a curtain. Very confused, they remind Becky that she said she lived alone, but she explains that it's just her brother Beau, and brushes it off as she leads them down into the basement. As you can probably guess, things start going from strange to downright creepy the further they get, and eventually they come to a curtained-off area that Becky calls the timeout corner. This is when she pulls back the curtain to reveal a man in a cage, called it, and explains that she's been onto them the entire time. That's when Big Stu spins around to run, but he doesn't get far before Bo knocks him out with a rag, catching them both and dragging them away to be used in one of Becky's bizarre experiments. Alright, well, so much for that spy mission, am I right? But the truth is their plan was doomed from the start. Now, right off the bat, they made a huge mistake by putting the hidden camera inside the dog carrier. Like, that might seem like a good idea on paper, but it completely ignores who they're dealing with. This lady is obsessed with dogs, so naturally, the first thing she's gonna do is get down for a closer look, and that's why the camera almost got spotted as soon as they walked in the door. If they were smart, they would have used a button camera or an eyeglasses camera or even a hat with the camera hidden inside it. And instead of sending them in alone, they should have had a backup waiting nearby with a live video or audio feed. That way they'd be ready to step in at the first sign of trouble. They also should have established a hard time limit before entering and agreed on a safe word that they could use to signal if things were going south. Now, the interaction started out normal enough, but there were definitely some red flags building up along the way. Like, Becky specifically said that nobody else lived there, and yet suddenly here's her big-ass brother just sitting in the kitchen. I mean, that's not a small mistake, that's a deliberate lie, and at that point I would have come up with an excuse to get the f*** up out of there. Instead, these idiots just followed her right down into the basement of no return, but the moment she started monologuing and revealed a man in a cage, that's when you need to get ready for a fight. With Bo closing in on him, Big Stu's best move here would have been to quickly dodge left and take cover between the rows of cluttered shelves. From there, he and Angela could have gone for the surgical tools or chemicals and used them as weapons to fight their way out. But now it looks like they're both about to get put in timeout. When Stuart the Big and Angelica never come back, Miles starts leaving messages at the doggy daycare threatening to call 12. But by the time that he finally decides to do something, it's already too late. Becky explains that Bo dug up two of their old dogs from the backyard, and now she's going to use their body parts to transform the two activists. Like, what? She's keeping them both locked in cages down in the basement, and when Big Stu starts acting up, she knocks him out with a dose of sedatives for being a bad dog. Now, as for Angelica, Becky has already removed her bottom jaw and replaced it with dog parts, but she gets a treat for playing along. With some help from Bo, the woman takes Stuart out of his cage and surgically attaches a paw to his hand. But that's just the start of what she's planning to do to his ass. Outside, Miles and the other activists decide to take matters into their own hands for once, finally, and instead of calling 12, they show up at the woman's house and break down her door, but they have no idea that she's already waiting for them. I mean, they hear Angelica calling for help, and nervously they make their way downstairs, and in the basement, they're shocked to find Bo filming them with a camera. But that's when Becky steps out of the shadows. Pulling back the curtain, she calls out two of her fur babies to deal with the intruders. And all of a sudden, hell to the no. The creatures rush across the room and start brutally ripping them apart. I mean, like, in a matter of seconds, all four of them are lying dead on the ground, and Becky gives her pets a treat for doing such a great job. Later, Gary is busy playing with his toys when a porch pirate shows up looking to steal some packages, but before he even knows what hit him, the beast lunges through the doggy door and starts tearing his ass apart. So it looks like Becky's doggy dream house is still open for business. Okay, well, I guess the only thing worse than their spy mission was their rescue plan. These idiots just got squad wiped by some kind of freaky-ad dog people, but this is a fight that they really should have been able to win. Now, first off, their decision not to call 12 was a huge mistake. Police aside, they should have immediately called the cops and let them check the house first, since they're the ones with the proper training and equipment to handle a hostage situation. Now, if the police do check the house and she still manages to cover it up, that's when we go full vigilante mode. But it's better to at least attempt doing things the right way first. Mistake number 2 was bringing 4 people and only 1 baseball bat. You're gonna need at least 1 weapon per person, and I'm talking more bats, a crowbar for breaching doors, tactical flashlights, and even some pepper spray for ranged attacks. Plus masks, goggles, work gloves, thick jackets, and some sort of makeshift armor. After entering the basement, the first thing they noticed was Bo standing in a corner with a camera. I mean, that's a sure sign that you're walking into a trap, so they should have frozen right there and got ready to either fight or make a break for the stairs. Now, Becky's fur babies, yeah, they might be terrifying, but they're still human, so as long as we remember that, we'll have a much better chance of surviving this fight. Although they're not trained fighters, the activists had them outnumbered 2 to 1. So the key here would have been to split into 2 pairs, forcing the creatures to divide their attention. You'd want to maintain distance, dodge the first lunge, and then swarm in while they're recovering to take them down, knocking over shelves and using anything they can find as an improvised weapon. After they'd defeated one of them, the 4 of them could have easily taken care of the last one, but since they panicked as soon as the fight started, they never even stood a chance. So cutting back to the documentary, the host explains that the concept of alien invaders first gained popularity thanks to the 1938 radio drama The War of the Worlds by the OG Orson Welles. Mans was really on some shit back then. Although it was completely fictitious, the broadcast felt so real that many people could not tell the difference. And it spazzed people the f*** out, and it still influences fear and how we think about aliens today. Real 5-star, no notes type shit. Anyways, for the final tape on the journey, we cut over to a young woman named Haley somewhere deep in the Mojave Desert. Rushing through her lines, she explains that the area is known for its UFO sightings and mentions reports of bright lights appearing in the sky. Later that day, she heads into town and meets with a few of the locals who all claim to have seen the mysterious lights around town. One of the guys even says that they landed near his house and claims that he saw strange-ass footprints all around the area, but it seems like his story is questionable at best. Later on, she eventually gets to interview a little girl who says that the aliens tried to take her pet hamster, but they left it alone when the girl asked them to stop. All in all, she finds over 20 eyewitness accounts and uses their stories to map out a few campsites that she wants to go check out. A few hours later, she takes a seat in front of the camera and explains the many complications of interstellar travel. Since time moves more slowly when you're traveling at light speed, a 2-week journey through the stars would be like 4 years here on Earth, and the problem only gets worse the farther you go. Completely spacing out, she blinks and then notices one of the lights off in the distance, but she can't tell if she managed to get it on camera. Rewinding the tape, she's ashamed to realize that she's been recording over footage of her daughter's birthday. Clearly pissed off, she ends up getting another chance to get the shot when the lights reappear a little while later, and all of a sudden, one of them breaks off from the group and starts getting closer to the ground. So she hops in her car and tries to chase it down. She tracks it to a clearing and notices a small light shining in the darkness. Getting closer, she realizes that it's her camera light reflecting off a large black object. To her surprise, a door opens on the object's surface, and after thinking it over, she decides to have a look inside. Okay, let me just stop her right there. Haley might be good at tracking down witnesses, but her approach here shows that she's in like way over her head, man. First of all, we don't know anything about what this object is made of or what kinds of effects that it might have. Like, for all she knows, this thing could be so radioactive that it just kills her from getting too close. She could end up exposing herself to alien microbes, or even worse, getting Earth bacteria onto their ship and infecting the entire galaxy. And what if the ship sees her as a threat? She could trigger the automated defenses and wind up getting microwaved as soon as she steps through the door. Now, believe it or not, there are actually guidelines in place for what to do if you ever encountered a crashed UFO or other piece of alien technology. Like, for example, the SETI Institute says that you should never interfere with an object or attempt to approach or enter it. Instead, secure the area. Observe from a safe distance, call the proper authorities, and let them take a closer look. If Haley were smart, she'd capture what she can from the outside of the ship, mark the landing site on her map, and then get the f*** out of there before the alien comes back. But instead, she's about to make the last mistake of her life. Looking around, Haley realizes that the ship is made of organic material, and there are long strings all around the inside that must serve some purpose. Reaching out with her hand, she plucks one of the strings just to see what would happen, and it makes a strange noise and leaves a deep cut on her finger just from the slightest touch. This is when a bunch of strange glowing particles emerge from the ceiling, and Haley's absolutely shocked when they start to heal her wound. It seems like the discovery of a lifetime, but that's when the alien suddenly returns, forcing her to find somewhere to hide. Watching from her hiding place, the creature reaches out and plucks a few of the strings before crawling into a glowing pod near the entrance. It looks like the coast is clear, and she gets up and tries one of the strings again for herself, but as the nanobots come to heal the cut, she realizes that they're actually fixing her up with another species' DNA. She notices that the alien has different animals from Earth all preserved in some kind of protective gels, but as she heads for the door, she's horrified to discover that the alien is already gone. Now starting to panic, there's nothing she can do as the ship starts a countdown sequence, and all of a sudden she winds up pinned to the floor as the object hurtles back into space. Haley's body was not built to survive that kind of space travel, and she ends up dying from the force of the liftoff. But a moment later, the nanobots come down and bring her back to life. She grabs her camera and looks out of the window to see Earth floating in the distance, and spots the other UFOs making the jump to light speed as well. Not sure what the hell is about to happen, she can only watch as her own ship makes the jump, slamming her body against the wall so fast that she literally explodes into 1,000 pieces. But sure enough, the nanobots swarm down and put her back together one cell at a time again. Except each time they repeat the process, her body becomes more and more disfigured, leaving her trapped in an endless cycle of pain as the ship keeps traveling the stars, bringing an end to our final tape. Alrighty then. Well, I guess Haley finally got the evidence that she was looking for. It's just too bad that she'll never be able to share it with anyone back on Earth. But the truth is that she never would have been in this mess if her curiosity hadn't gotten the best of her. So sorry, Haley, but it looks like you just f***ed up. I mean, come on now, do you really expect me to feel bad for you here? Because it's pretty damn hard after watching you make one moronic decision after another. If I saw something like that, I would be driving in the opposite direction. But I guess the difference is that I want to survive while you were obsessed with proving that aliens were real. But why though? I mean, nobody ever believes these tapes anyway, so you were just basically risking your life for a bunch of people on the internet to tell you that it's fake. It takes a special kind of stupid to watch a non-existent door appear out of nowhere and say, you know what, this looks like an invitation. Like, yeah, maybe an invitation to your funeral, but I know, let's just go around touching everything in sight when we have no idea what any of this does. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it looks like you f***ed around and found out, and the worst part is you forgot these aliens were friendly. I mean, they gave that little girl her hamster back, so you probably could have just woke the guy up and asked him to nicely let you out, but now it looks like you'll be spending the next several light years getting blown to bits and put back together. And when that happens, I think it's safe to say that you just f***ed up. Cutting back to the last part of the documentary, the host explains that the family's son completely fell off the map once the house was sold, and no one had any idea what happened there until the tapes showed up at an auction years later. It's now the time for them to finally watch the footage, and they're all left speechless by what they see. On the tapes, we see a man lying in bed with a bright orange light, and it begins to shine through the window, and a tall, pale figure slowly walks into frame, reaching down and starts pulling what looks like a string of eggs out of the man's body, before holding open his mouth and pushing the camera straight down his throat. In the end, there's no way to really prove if the footage was real or not, but there's one lesson we can all learn here, and that's sometimes you're just better off leaving E.T. and his friends alone.
VHS Beyond. And you know, I can see why people are saying that this is the best entry in the VHS series so far. I mean, it had everything, but you guys gotta let me know down in the comments if you would have done anything differently. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe. Check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.